I picked up this SMD Soldering Practice Kit on AliExpress because, well, I need to practice my SMD soldering and get good at it. I am finally revisiting some of my past electronics projects, and yes, part 2 of the motorized gimbal will finally be coming soon. But I have other projects that I started to do a while ago that I need to get finished off, and I want to get some custom PCBs made, and I want to use surface mount components to keep things as small as possible. So today, that's what I'm going to be doing, learning how to get good at SMD soldering. So this is the kit, and it's one you might have seen before. I've seen a few other videos about this on YouTube. It's got a whole bunch of different sizes on it: 1206, 0805, 0603, 0402. Couple of ICs, and on the back it's just got a bunch of different pitches for your traces and different sizes, just as a reference. These don't actually do anything, you don't solder anything to here. These ones though form an actual circuit, and that was why I decided to have a go at this one. I'd seen a few different SMD kits, but I wanted one that actually did something, so that after soldering, how many are there? 1, 2, 3, 24, 36, 78, 79, 80, and however many. That was, what, probably about 100 components on there. So yeah, after soldering 100 teeny tiny little components on there, I wanted it to do something. So it's going to have some little flashy LEDs. But we'll have a look at the components inside. We have, and I'll get closer views of these after as I solder them on, but here we have some teeny tiny little diodes. We have resistors, resistors, more resistors, more resistors, more resistors, and more resistors. Oh, and some resistors. We have in here some little LEDs. More resistors. I'm guessing those are the 0402 resistors. These things are teeny tiny. Wow. We got one of our ICs there, one of our ICs there, and those, I think they might be transistors. Yes, 4 transistors right there. There are a few other things that I've bought as well to help me with this. So normally I use these kinds of tweezers, just the cheap little metal tweezers. I got some of these ceramic tweezers. I actually got a set of 4, and we'll have a play around and we'll see which one of these works best for these teeny tiny components. I also got, you've all seen this is my TS100. This is the soldering iron that immediately became my favorite, and it's the one I still use as my main soldering iron. There's a video that I'll link about it up there, but I got this tip when I got the soldering iron, and I don't really use it that much, but I think it might be time to. I also picked up, well, let's take it out of the bag. So this has never been used. I got it on Amazon. It claimed to be an original tip, but it is not an original tip. It doesn't have the logo on here. So this one's got the logo on it. You can't really see it anymore, but it's there. But the reason I got this mostly was just to have a different tip type that I could try that would transfer a bit more thermal energy than this, because there isn't a lot of mass here. I also picked up another tip which came with the Pinecil Pine64, so we're going to give this a go. This is essentially a USB version of the TS100. They're approximately the same size. The buttons are in a slightly different place. And this one came with another fine point tip that's actually, you can see the shape is actually a little bit different. This one goes a little bit wider, so this should probably transfer a bit more heat than this one as well. But all these tips are essentially interchangeable. This is the one that came with the Pine64. This is one of the ones I got with my TS100. They all just fit in fine to both. I also got, I'm running out of space, I also got this PCB holder, which you might have seen on, well, a few channels. I know Pile of Stuff's got one, but I saw this on Amazon and it was at a really good price, so I thought, yes, I will get one. I got some liquid flux as well, along with a bunch of brushes for painting it on. I thought there was a brush in the lid, but it turns out there isn't. So I just want to give you a close-up look at the board. I'll have a link to this down in the description. We can see we've got a dozen 1206 slots there, another dozen 805, another dozen 805, and a couple of dozen 603s, along with another dozen 0402s, and then we've got all our diodes and resistors and LED connections, along with the chips in the middle. If I go over to the 0402, 2.5 millimeters, like the actual components. That's the 0603s. That's the 0402s. They're like a millimeter long. I possibly won't be able to hand solder those. We'll see. I don't know. Maybe after I've been through all of these, they won't be quite as difficult as I thought. So this is the solder that I use. This is leaded solder. This is AIM solder, which stands for the American Iron and Metal Company, made in Canada. It's 62% tin, 36% lead, and 2% silver. And I like this because it's a eutectic solder. It doesn't have like that gooey, squishy state. It goes straight from a liquid to a solid and from a solid to a liquid. But I had to get this imported because you just cannot buy decent leaded solder in the UK anymore. And I got a pound of this, which will probably last me like pretty much the rest of my life. So first solder the 1206 packaged SMD components, then solder the 805 packaged components, then solder the 603 and the 402, and finally the middle part. So we will mount this board up in the PCB holder and start soldering. Looking at the components, these are the largest resistors. These are the 1206s, and I'm going to start off with my TS100 using the tip that I normally use for doing through-hole components. Now, just about everything I've read when it comes to surface mount components with a soldering iron says that you should do one pad first and then bring up your component to it, if I can find where I put my tweezers, and then solder down the one side and then come back, do the other side, and then come touch up the first side again. That seems to have gone okay. Give that another touch. Well, it seems to go quite painless. Let's see if I tin up a couple of these. And we'll pull a couple more of these resistors out of here. There we go. Well, it's a little bit wonky. See if we can straighten that a little bit, shall we? There we go. See if I can attack it from the back, see if that's any easier. The one thing I'm not liking about this, I don't know if you can quite see, I adjust these, I might have to refocus, is that they're a little bit pointy. I guess they're not too bad. That one is quite pointy. There. Oops, no, that's way off. It's really nice having this macro lens up above with a monitor to be able to keep an eye on where things are positioned. That's very cool. I'm going to swap tips after this one, I think, because it's a little bit awkward. I'm going to go swap tips over to this one. I'm going to go from that one to this one, and we'll see if it works any better. So as I mentioned, this isn't a tip I've used very often, just purely because you know, with through-hole stuff, this teeny tiny little point doesn't transfer a whole lot of heat into the part. But we'll pop you on there. Yeah! Where'd you go? We'll try another one. We'll retrieve that in a minute. I'm going to do 3 with each of these tips just to see how they do. But already I'm not quite liking this, and we'll have a closer look at these tips. And I've got my iron at 320 degrees. I don't know, that looks kind of even, but it's not transferring a lot of heat in there at all. We'll pop another one on. Yeah. This is not going as intended at all. This is going to be fun when we get to the 805s. I haven't even used any of the flux on this one yet, but I will do when we get to the next one. I need a bit more solder on that side. Now, can we get that resistor at the back? There we go. Move you. We'll pop a blob of solder on here. I think I'm being too picky with my positioning. Ah! We'll try that again. Oh, well, that's very good, isn't it? Yeah, this is... This is not ideal with this tip at all. Maybe it'll go easier on the smaller ones. So, we'll get rid of this tip and we'll swap over to the one that came with the Pinecil, which, as you can see, it's not massively bigger, but it's noticeably bigger. All right, it seems to have settled on 320, so let's give this another go. Do I need to adjust my focus a little here? There we go. So we'll try this here. Well, that's certainly melting a lot easier than the super fine tip. Get 3 more of these resistors out, and we'll pop one on here. Oh wow, yeah, that's definitely much easier than the last pointy tip. It's still not perfect, but it's definitely a lot easier than the other one. Oh, it might be the best one so far. That's way too far over compared to where I wanted it to be. There we go, that's better. Let's see if I pull this around the back way. Is that going to be any easier for me to deal with? A little bit. One more of these. And then we'll switch over to the final tip, the new one I just bought. Yeah, that one's too far over again. Fortunately, resistors are fairly resilient, so hopefully I haven't killed any of these with too much heat. So that is that tip. It did do much better than that one, but I mean, you can see the difference in the points there when I get them up close. To my eye, they actually both look fairly similar, but you can see that this one on the left is definitely a bit bigger tip than this one. But now we're going to swap over to this tip. And so on that axis, it's a little similar width, but on that axis, it's wide. So we've got hopefully a lot more thermal mass there to transfer some heat over. So we'll get this one on here. Oh, that applied quickly. Right. And this should hopefully go a bit easier. Oh, wow. That was quick. That's on already. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of these on for now. Wow. So it's a lot easier to... It's a lot easier to sort of pinpoint stuff with that last tip I used. I'm going to turn this one around. So the last tip I used has pretty decent thermal efficiency. Not as good as this, but it was a lot easier to point at small stuff. This one, yeah, that's a challenge getting the other side, because it was easy on this side because there was nothing in the way. On this side, there's something in the way. Wow, that just went up the tip and onto the pad over there. All right, we'll give this another go here. Now it's time, I think. I'm going to turn the iron off and we'll have a look at all of these. Yeah, they're not great, but I'll give this a clean off with some isopropyl alcohol and get all this flux off. So there we go. With all the flux cleaned off, they don't look so bad. So these first three here on the right were done with my regular tip that I normally use for through hole. These three were done with the sharp pointy tip that I almost never use. These three were done with the new tip that came with the Pinecil that's also kind of pointy but not as pointy as that. And these were done with that new flat chisel tip that I just bought. And you can see it's not great at really getting into fine stuff because it's easy to have the solder just flow up the tip and onto the next pad over. I do like it for, well, actually I need to touch them up and add a bit more solder on those too. But I do like it for laying down that initial solder and getting the parts locked in. I'm wondering if that might be what I use this tip for, is just to put down the initial blob and then come back with the iron I used for these to actually complete the connection and touch up the original joint. But right, I'm going to do these two, just touch them up on that far side. And then I'm going to switch over to the Pinecil 64 and see how that compares to the TS100. So I've swapped lenses back over because I'm going to switch soldering irons. I have been using the TS100 for all of this so far, and there are some differences between the two. This one you'll see, well, it's not quite in focus, but this one has a DC barrel jack and then it has a micro USB socket. The micro USB socket is purely for communication with a computer, so you can reconfigure it, upload firmware, change settings. This one has a barrel jack and Type-C USB, and this Type-C USB also supports power delivery, so you can actually power it from a power bank over USB. There's a slight power loss in this one. This one goes 12 to 24 volts and does 17 to 65 watts. This one only goes up to 21 volts and 60 watts. So the power supply that I normally use with this, which is a 24 volt power supply, I can't plug into this. I have got here a 45 watt USB power bank, and apparently it supports USB power delivery and quick charge, so you could power it from that one too. But I'm going to power it from here and we'll see what kind of voltage and current it draws first of all. You can see here I've got my USB meter. I should plug it in there first really. Oh, we've lost focus. There we are. I've got my silicon mat down so it doesn't have anything to focus on. Now we'll plug this in and we'll see that it draws. Well, this is upside down now, but that's the right way up. It's negotiated 15 volts and it's drawing very little because this is turned off. But you can see here, it's currently at 25 degrees in this room and the temperature's set to 320. That's what it'll go to when I turn it on. But if I turn this on, it's drawing 28.8 watts. And you can see the temperature update here is rapid. On the TS100, it'd basically update, I don't know, maybe every half a second or so to show you the current temperature. This is like real time. You can also see a timer counting down here. So it's currently on 27, 26, 25. That's the timer for the movement sensor. This has like a, I don't know if it's a full gyro or just a movement sensor, but as soon as you move this, that resets back to 50 seconds because it has a sleep mode. So if you put this down and forget about it, it will automatically turn itself off. This one will do that too, although it doesn't actually give you an indication as to how long it is before it's going to happen. Not that it really matters, either you're using it or you're not. Right, we'll unplug this. I'm going to let this cool back down and then we will try it with this because this is a 60 watt USB power delivery charging, charger. This one goes from the mains. I don't have a 60 watt USB power delivery power bank, so we're going to use this and then we'll see how quickly this gets back up to temperature using that one. Okay, I've left this cooling down for a good 20 minutes or so. And now we're going to try it with this USB PD charger, which puts the full 60 watts that this can handle. In theory anyway. Let's find out and see what it negotiates. It's negotiated the full 20 volts. So if we turn this on, let me turn you back around this way, and we'll start the timer again. Pulling a lot more current now. It's at 50 watts. It's not quite 60, but it's pulling 20 volts at 2.5 amps. So now 2 amps. And there we go. We're pretty much at temp. It overshot a little bit, but it's settling. So it's definitely a lot quicker when it's coming off 20 volts rather than 15. I might have to run a PID tuning on this because I mean, it's only flickering by a few degrees, but it'd be nice if it were a bit more steady at exactly 320. I did do a PID tune on this one when I first got it, so I'm assuming you can do it on this one as well. I'm going to be using this tip, and I'm taking this PCB out of the holder because I think it's going to be a lot easier to do this straight down here. I can get my hands more steady on the mat. I'm probably not going to say much because there's not much to say. I may jump in if there's any important bits, but this is probably going to be time-lapse. Okay, I'm lying. We're not going time-lapse just yet because we're onto a new size. These are the 0805s, and these are the first ones I'm doing with the Pinecil. So we'll let this get up to temperature. The first 3, I'm just going to do with the solder. But then after that, I think we're going to give the flux a go. So we'll peel these out of here. And you can't see me peeling them out of here. So the iron's up to temperature. I'm going to tin 3 of these pads right here. It's really weird trying to do this on the monitor when I have no depth perception. But right, I am going to pop this first capacitor on. And we'll see how that goes. Oh, that wasn't too bad. We'll spin you around. We'll pop some solder on from this side. That lack of depth perception is annoying. Well, that's not too bad. We'll pop this one on. Okay, this isn't actually too bad with this fine tip. There you go. So they're not too bad. I'm going to pop this down on there and we'll give this a quick spritz if I can find where I put my little brush. They look really quite good, actually. Alrighty, so now we're going to open up the rosin flux that you can't see. So I don't need the flux just to tin these pads. So I'm going to do that first. We'll get these next 3 done. Now we've got the pads tinned. I'm going to dip my brush into the flux and then brush it on here. See if this helps them to go a little bit easier and cleaner. Okay, that went on easier, but it's a bit cockeyed, so we'll do that again. Now we'll add our next one on. Oh, that's way too far over. I'm dreading when I get to the 603s, and I don't even want to think about the 402s just yet. So they went on pretty good. So now we've still got a bit of flux on there. I'm going to add a drop more just because I can. So now that we've got flux on both sides, this should go a lot easier. At least in theory. Wow. Yeah, okay, that's a lot easier. Okay, they're not quite as straight as I'd like. Okay. Well, one of those went on really cockeyed, but we'll clean them up. Yeah, that one is, yeah, a little bit off axis. But right, now we'll go time lapse. I'm going to flux up the rest of these, tin them, and do the rest. And then I'll get onto the resistors. Right, that's the capacitors finished off and all 8 of those resistors on. I'm going to flux down the whole thing and solder the other side. And once you get into a groove, it's quite relaxing. Done. So now we'll give that a clean. There we are. Other than that one wonky capacitor, they all look pretty good. So it's been a couple of days since the last bit you just saw where I finished up the left side of the board. I've actually made a couple of little changes. I fixed that one dodgy resistor and just neatened things up a little bit. I'm not going to speak much more for this, but we are on to the 0603, which are the first of the challenging components. I'm just going to plug in the iron and get on with it. Okay, these are getting so small now that I can't even read the text on my little field world monitor in front of me on these. So I'm gonna take this macro camera and try and drop it a little bit lower down and closer to the board to make it easier to see. Whoops, I forgot to hit record again after I moved the camera. That's 6 of them done though. I still have another 6 to go, don't worry. Yeah, as you can see, I've not really paid attention to which direction up these are. Sorry. I tried to keep all these ones the same way up because I know it annoys people when they're all mixed up like this, and it annoys me too. But honestly, these things are so small. Just trying to get them mounted is a pain. Trying to do it the right way up is just a nightmare. I mean, they're going on fairly well. Okay, they're on. Right, I'm going to whack some flux on these and then solder up the other side. So there are the resistors. They actually weren't that bad. We'll go with the capacitors. I do feel quite comfortable with these 603s, but they're not my favourites. I'll be honest. They're a bit of a pain. Alrighty, we're on the home stretch for, well, at least for these practice bits. And we're on the scary one, it's the 0402s. I mean, the actual main circuit that does stuff, there's no components on it this tiny. They're all like 0805. But yeah, these 0402s scare me. I might actually, you know, switch back over to that super fine point tip for this one. Okay. Now the bit that I've been dreading. Oh god, I'll be amazed if I can even pick these up. God, I'll be even more amazed if I don't lose any. I've just pulled 4 out for now. Wow. Lining these up. It's possible. Not easy. So what have we learned from this little experiment? Well, we learned that I can do SMD not too terribly with a soldering iron. Tip size definitely matters. Like this, I mean, as challenging as this is, putting on these little 042 components with this super fine tip, it's challenging, but it doesn't feel impossible. Wow, this is difficult. How many have I done? I can't even... Okay, I'm on number 5. Yeah, I'm going to do these, but then I'm not going to bother with the rest of these 0402s. I am literally never going to make a project with 0402 components for hand soldering. No, it's just not going to happen. That's it. That's all the 402s I'm doing. I'm going to clean this off. We'll have a quick look at them. They actually don't look too bad. I'm quite pleased with them. I will never plan a board with 0402 components, I'll probably never plan a board with 0603 components. I'm happy with the 0805s, really, honestly. But yeah, I'm going to zoom this back out and then we'll get on with doing this. Alrighty, so we are back on the 0805 components for the main circuit, and I've ditched the super fine tip and I'm going back to this one. So the schematic says 330, these are 470, but R51 through R60, which is all these that go around the edge, and these ones here are all listed on the schematic as 330 ohm, but that's close enough for an LED. I'll tell you what, after doing the 0402s and the 0603s, it's a lot easier to not put too much solder on the 0805s. A lot easier. Right, so that's those tinned on one pad. So we'll open these and get them all on. R49 is one of, where are they? Was it that one? Yes. 2 mega ohm. The schematic says 1.3, but 2 will be fine. Alright, capacitor C27, 0.1 mic. Well, there's only 2 capacitors on here. And there's only 2 yeah. There's only 2 capacitors. I can't talk today. There's only 2 capacitors on the schematic, and there's only 2 capacitors in the kit that we haven't used on these practice bits. So I'm assuming it's those, C27 and C28. I'm gonna do the other sides of all these resistors, I think, because the only other things to put on now are diodes, LEDs, transistors, and the chips. So I'm going to do the other sides of all of these. So we'll put some flux on and start on those. So these are the LEDs, and there's supposed to be some indication of which side is which. I imagine I will mess that up. So I'm going to get 4 of these out to start for those 4 corners, and absolutely none of them made it onto the camera. LEDs are polarized, and it does matter which way up you put them. But I have my multimeter here, and I'm going to pop it into diode mode, because this is the absolute easiest way on teeny tiny components to figure out, or at least teeny tiny LEDs and diodes, to figure out which side is positive and which side is negative. And it's that way. Whoops. So I've turned it around. Absolutely, totally on purpose, but you'll see. No, it wasn't. I just messed up. This doesn't light up now. But if we spin it around that way, now it does. Yeah. So the right side is positive, the left side is negative. So those should all be the same way around, with positive on the right and negative on the left. So that's the easy way to figure out which side's which on LEDs. You'll see in the box where the diode goes, there's a thick bit. That's the cathode, which is the negative side. And just before I solder down the other side, I'm going to double check that this is the right way around. Yup. Alrighty, before we give this a clean, I'm going to get these transistors on. I'm going to go give this a clean before we tackle these 4 diodes and the 2 ICs. Alrighty, so the ICs I'm going to do a little bit differently. You can see I've already tinned one of these pins here for the 555. I'll be honest, that was completely by accident, but I'm just going to add a little bit more on there. Just a little bit. And then I'm going to take this 555 out of its packet. So earlier, when I said I hadn't soldered any surface mount components before, a little bit of a fib. I have soldered a couple of ICs before. And I found that the whole drag soldering thing just works really, really well for me. So that's what I'm going to do here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tack 1 pin on there. Right, and then I'm just going to tack a teeny tiny little bit on the opposite corner. Like that, and that'll hold that in place. Now what I'm going to do is cover it in flux. So I'm switching over to the new flat chisel tip that I just got. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this up with some solder. Oops. There we go. And then we'll do the other side. There we go, drag soldered. And now I'll do the same on this one. There we go. All the pins are soldered and there's nothing bridged, so we're good. So now, the only thing we need to do is swap back to the other lens and add power. Alrighty then, so we are on the final bit. It's all assembled, it's all clean, it's all just needs power. I can remove the soldering iron so I don't burn myself. 12 volts, this is supposed to be able to handle 12 volts. Let's give it a go and see what happens. Oh. Oh, well, something's not going right. I've messed something up somewhere. Right. I am gonna go fix this. I'm not gonna do it on camera. I'm gonna go fix this and I'll be back when it's working. Okay, it's working. So apparently there were a couple of LEDs on here that hadn't quite been soldered down properly. So once I went over them again and added a drop more solder, everything sprang into life. You notice I also soldered the connectors on here for power because just holding them on was being a little bit temperamental, and I don't have any power leads with alligator clips. I'm going to have to resolve that. But that's it. I'm done. I'm beat. This thing's been a pain in the ass. It's put me off surface mount devices forever. Although I'm going to be putting myself through it again at some point. I'm definitely never, ever, ever going to design something for hand soldering with 0603 or 0402 components. I mean, it was fun. I did okay. They're a nightmare. I don't want to hand solder these. 0805s, maybe if I'm really pushed for space, but I'm probably going to try and go for 1206 whenever I can. But that's it for now. I'm done with this. I mean, no doubt you saw lots of problems with my technique and throughout this video. So please do feel free to give me some advice and drop some comments down below. If you like this video, thumbs up as usual, and all the rest of it. Thanks for watching. I'm going to bed. I'll see you next time.